In this video, we will discuss about three main things: command line interface, terminal, and command. Command line interface, in short, we call them CLI as well, command line interface. And it is basically a way of talking to your computer by typing command in a special window to open, and we call that special window terminal. Now, to understand command line interface, first we need to know about the terminal. In this picture, you can see between user and shell there is another interface which we call them terminal. Let's discuss this terminal first. Basically, terminal is used these days in short for terminal emulator. So terminal emulator, we call them in short a terminal. In old days, before computer has a graphical user interface, they had a text-based interface. In old days, there were no graphical user interface. So that time they were called that terminal. However, and now these days, this terminal emulator is called terminal. So keep in mind, if you search, so you will find terminal was the old computer, it will show you that one. Because in old days, there were no graphical user interface. So when the graphical user interface came, so top of this graphical user interface, which is the default one in every operating system, Linux and also in Windows, if you want to talk to your computer, to your shell, you need to install a special application that called terminal emulator. And this terminal emulator allows you to use a shell on your computer. Because there is a user, then a terminal, then is a shell. So if you want to talk to your shell, you need to open this special application called them terminal emulator. So this terminal is an application that allows you to use a shell on your computer. So in other words, if I make them more simple, a terminal is a software application on your computer that take input and show the output. That window which is open. In the case of window, we have CMD. So this CMD, you can say this is a terminal emulator. Also, we have another PowerShell. This PowerShell is also called terminal emulator. And Linux, every Linux has their own. If I go to Kali Linux and open this one, you see terminal emulator. On the top, there is mentioned terminal emulator. Use the command line. They say open this terminal emulator to use the command line to talk to your shell using the command line interface. So this application, this window which you can see on the screen is called terminal emulator or terminal, which can take input from user and to give it to shell. So if I say the shell is the part of the terminal. A terminal emulator is a program that runs a shell. So when I open a terminal, a black window that runs shell appear. So I can run my command. So don't confuse the window which I open, the application which I have installed in my window in my Linux to talk to the shell. Now every operating system has their own shell. It can be different. And in the case of Windows, we have a PowerShell. So PowerShell, the window which is open is called terminal emulator. And the way I can talk to them is called shell. And every shell has their own language, their own way of communication and own commands. So in Windows, I also show you, and Linux, I show you the terminal emulator. Now coming to you, now you can easily understand command line interface. So the window which is you open, which is called a terminal, the user typically interact with the shell via the command line interface. Now there is no graphical way. Now you need to type a special type of character, a text, and this terminal emulator, that altogether text-based interface which you type the entire command, that is called command line interface. So the CLI is the tool that we use for interacting with the computer and typing out our commands. Now this command include many things. All this together is command line interface. So if I say make a, let's go to another one, suppose echo shell, or let me type this command sudo apt distro upgrade help. All these is the command line interface, including this one. All these things is called command line interface. So the cursor, the user input command, you can consider the entire line you type and to be the instance of the CLI command line interface. So the text based interaction which I do with my shell is called, using the entire command, is called command line interface. So now I hope so you understand these two things. So user need to open a terminal emulator application and they need to type the text based things, and those text based thing, the entire thing is called command line interface. These two things are clear. Now let's go to commands. Now every, like the same command, if I go to PowerShell, so let me type ls. So ls is working here as well, and Kali Linux as well, the same way. If I say dir, so dir also common in both shell. So this is a PowerShell, and the one shell I'm using there is the Z shell, because I show you before that I'm using, I'm using Z shell. So shell is like a language. Every language has their own keyword. So those cannot be the same here. Maybe some of them are the common, like dir, ls are the common one. So this command line interface, every shell has their own way to talk to them, and that is called command. So in general, command is composed in 3 elements, and it is separated by one or more space character. Keep in mind, there will be a space. So a command name, and then we have an option, we call them flags as well, and then we have an argument. So there are 3 things in the command. Keep in mind, it's not necessary that every command has these 3 things. Most command except option, most command, not all. Also these option we call them flag or switches as well. And these switches and these flag modify the behavior of the command. And it's quite easy to recognize them. They always be a dash or double dash. So if you want to know that it is a flag or switch or option, so there will be a dash or double dash, and this way, like ls is the command, dash, so there is a dash. Dash l means this is a switch, this is a flag, this is an option, because it will always be start from dash or double dash. And finally we have an argument. So in this case we have etc. etc is the argument. So command is the instruction which give it to through the help of terminal emulator to your shell to do this job. Command, like this is my command to do this for me. You know, in English we say command, this is my command to do this job. So command is basically divided in 3 things. But it's not necessary I say that maybe there is a command without option and without argument. I will show you few of them. So suppose if I go to Kali Linux, and here I can type ls. This is a command. If I want, so ls dash l. Now I type dash. So dash means this is option, switch. and then it show me all these things. And if I want /etc directory detail, so this is an argument. So all these is the command, but they are different. Here the first one is without anything, is a command. Then I put a switch, then I put with the argument. So this is a complete command. Now there is a switches as well, there is option as well, there is argument as well. So mostly you will find these three things. I hope so you understand that what is a command, what is a terminal, and what is command line interface.